Richard Brodsky, thank you very much for being back with us at Capitol tonight. It's great to see you.
Nice to be back, Liz.
So I want to talk about this op-ed that you wrote that basically makes a different argument for the millionaire's tax, the money that would be raised for it. You want to basically create a jobs plan. Is that correct? Sort of a state-level jobs plan.
The national economy is stagnant. The state economy is stagnant. Washington is politically paralyzed, and there is no reason on God's earth for the state government to stand on the sideline when it can create jobs. There are lots of good things we could do, improve the flooding protections we have for people, build roads and bridges, reinvest in green jobs, really important things. But we've learned that you just can't go and create debt, so I connect these projects to a reinstatement of the millionaire's tax. And I think it makes a lot of sense. I think it would be good for our economy. I think it has a lot of popular appeal. And I'm hearing back a lot of favorable stuff.
Well, what's new about this is not your advocacy for the millionaire's tax, because we have heard and we have seen on this show you do that before, and we'll talk a little bit more about the support, widespread support for that in a second, according to various different polls. But what's new is that most people say, let's raise this revenue and offset cuts to health care, cuts to education. You're saying, let's raise this revenue and put people back to work. That's a different argument and not a, if you forgive me, a liberal left argument. So you're trying to bring people in from the right?
Well, I'm not trying to do anything but what I think can be effective to create jobs in New York. If it brings people from the right and the left together, that's an added benefit. And frankly, what I've heard back today gives you a sense that there is real interest in stimulating New York's economy. But to do that, you have to invest. To do that, you have to avoid debt. And I think that's the great lesson of the last years. To do that, you have to have the revenues. This is a revenue that's available, and I think its uses would make it both popular, which is good, but more importantly, would make it useful to create jobs in the state, which is essential.
Yeah, the popularity part, it would probably be more popular, for example, to improve roads and bridges than it would be to prevent public sector layoffs. And although there is some support for the PEF renegotiations that the governor engaged in over the weekend, we'll see what the rank and file does. According to today's Siena poll, I think that some New Yorkers are willing to see cuts to the state workforce in the next round of budget talks.
Yeah, look, that's a complicated issue, and part of what I propose would deal with public sector jobs. That's part of this equation, especially in education. But the point of it all is that in the face of paralysis in Washington, New York's leadership can't stand by and do nothing when we can create jobs in the state and meet really badly needed physical and human infrastructure projects.
Well, I think the Cuomo administration would beg to differ with you. I don't think they feel like they're standing by and doing nothing. They just inked a deal that supposedly will bring $4 billion worth of investment, high-tech investment, into New York over the next 5 years, and it's costing the state $400 million.
Well, that's good. I'm glad to hear it. I don't doubt that the governor is working hard to do what he can do to create jobs, but where there are other ideas that are at least as good, I'm sure he will give them serious consideration in due course.
Okay, but when it comes to the millionaire's tax, we just heard from him yet again this week that he is reiterating that he will oppose it. And interestingly, for the first time, he has linked his opposition to the millionaire's tax to his father's opposition to reinstating the death penalty. Now, I know this might be something that you have something to say about, because it seems like a strange argument to make.
Well, I was in fact, in 1 year, I was the key vote in maintaining first Governor Cuomo's position on the death penalty,
right,
which I agreed with. But it had an ethical and moral quality. The millionaire's tax is a policy question, which reasonable people can disagree on. And I'm sure this governor will maintain an open mind. He has done that in the past, and I'm sure that as the arguments for a jobs program in New York become more and more powerful, he'll be part of the process of solving that problem.
Yeah, actually, Richard, though, I've heard you on this show argue that the millionaire's tax is indeed a moral issue. You have said that you think that the disparity, the growing disparity between the rich and the poor, and government has a responsibility to do something about it. Do you not?
Well, I said it was a fairness issue, and I think it is a fairness issue. But even as a fairness issue, it's a policy fairness issue, while the death penalty goes to deeply held religious and ethical values. I don't know that it's useful to parse words on this, except to say that we need to put New Yorkers back to work a bond act, a transportation flooding infrastructure bond act would do that. Paying for it makes sense, and we have a plan that works pretty well.
Yeah, regarding the Bond Act, I mean, is that something that would be sort of like what the President has proposed in terms of an infrastructure bond bank, like a jobs bank, to encourage private investment using public funds to leverage that?
No, it would not. It would be something that the Constitution of the State of New York permits, which is a referendum on whether the people of the state want to borrow and spend the money for that purpose. The difference here is that we would use the revenue from a millionaire's tax to pay back the bondholders in ways that would, frankly, enrich all of them. So it's a pretty well thought out piece, and I think it's going to have some legs.
Yeah, I just want to ask you also before I let you go regarding PEF and the contract negotiations. I mean, we've talked a little bit about public sector employee unions. You've spoken about the need to support them. Do you believe that the governor did the right thing and that now rank and file members should approve this new agreement?
Well, look, this is industrial democracy, and it doesn't always work smoothly. Collective bargaining is the best and, frankly, the only fair way to work out these kinds of problems. The parties have to work it out themselves. The CSEA took essentially the same deal and approved it. The rank and file members of PEF chose not to. I think there'll be a process of rethinking, rediscussion, and in the end, I think collective bargaining will work again, and we'll have labor peace in the state, which is good not just as we solve a budget crisis, but it's the right way to run a government.
So, but you're not advocating one way or another, so you wouldn't say this deal is the right one?
I don't know enough about the details, except to say that the voice of the rank and file has to be taken seriously, and the governor's predicament with respect to balancing a budget has to be taken seriously, and then it has to be negotiated out. Governor has a problem. He can't redo the deal for one union and not do it for all the others.
Right.
The rank and file has a problem. I'm not sure that they at any point want to see 3,500 of their colleagues laid off and public services reduced. It's a messy process, but it's the best one we have.
Okay, Richard Brodsky, thanks very much. A new take on the millionaire's tax and, of course, some other stuff thrown in for good measure. I want to thank you very much for being with us.
Always a pleasure, Liz.